Welcome to Understanding Azure Regions and Regional Pairs. Microsoft Azure is made up of physical data centers. These data centers are located all around the world. When you create a resource like a virtual machine, what you're really doing is using physical equipment, the underlying physical pieces, in one or more of these locations. Now, data centers aren't exposed to the end users directly, but instead, Azure organizes them into what are called Azure regions. Essentially, what a region is a geographical area somewhere in the world that contains at least one, but maybe more data centers that are networked together via a low latency network. When you deploy a resource in Microsoft Azure, you're prompted to choose the region where you want that resource deployed. It doesn't happen all the time, but in most cases, you'll have to choose that region. I should point out that there are some services or even VM features that are only available in certain regions. For example, certain VM sizes are only available in certain regions. Certain storage types are only available in certain regions. So the region is going to determine what features are available. Now, there's also some global Azure services that don't require you to select a specific region. That's why I said you'll usually have to choose a region. Azure services like Azure Active Directory, Azure Traffic Manager, and Azure DNS are some services that are more global in nature that don't require you to select a specific region when you're deploying them. Now, examples of regions include things like East US, Canada Central, and North Europe. The image on your screen shows all of the available Azure regions at the time of this lecture recording. Now, I should mention that regions are important because what they do is they provide flexibility in allowing you to deploy applications closer to your end users regardless of their location in the world. Regions provide better scalability and redundancy, and they also do a really good job of preserving data residency for your services, which means if you have to ensure your data stays in the US, or it has to stay in Germany, or has to stay in Italy, these regions allow you to preserve that data residency. Now, there are some Azure special regions as well, or really they're called special Azure regions. These specialized regions are what you would want to use when you build out your applications for compliance or legal purposes. For example, you have the US DoD Central, US Gov Virginia, US Gov Iowa, and similar regions. These are regions that are physical, but they're also logical network isolated instances of Azure for US government agencies and its partners. These particular data centers are operated by screened US personnel, and they include additional compliance certifications. A few other examples of these special regions include China East, China North, and the like. These regions are available actually through a special partnership between Microsoft and 21viaNet. What this means is Microsoft doesn't directly maintain those data centers. I do want to mention that there are two other terms that you should keep in mind, and that's geographies and availability zones. And we've referred to geographies already. Now, availability zones, which we'll actually get into more detail on later on, these availability zones are created by using one or more data centers. So what that means is there's a minimum of 3 zones within a single region. Now, it's always possible that a large disaster could cause an outage that's big enough to affect more than one data center. So that is why Azure also creates region pairs. So let's talk a little bit about region pairs. Now, each Azure region is going to always be paired with another region within the same geography. Now, a geography would be like the US or Europe or Asia. Now, it's going to be paired within the same geography at least 300 miles away. Now, the reason they do this is so that it can allow for the replication of resources like VM storage across a geography that helps reduce the chances of some kind of interruption because of an event like a natural disaster or civil unrest, maybe power outages or physical network outages that can sometimes affect both regions at once. If a region in a pair was affected by a natural disaster, for example, services would automatically fail over to the other region in its region pair. Now, for example, some region pairs in Azure include like a West US, which is paired with East US, and Southeast Asia paired with East Asia. Now, because these region pairs are directly connected, but far enough apart to be isolated from regional disasters, they're used to provide reliable services and data redundancy. There's even some Azure services that offer automatic geo-redundant storage through the use of region pairs. So really, the key advantages of region pairs revolve around availability and data residency. For example, if an Azure outage occurs, one region out of every pair is going to be prioritized to make sure that at least one of those regions in the pair is restored as quickly as possible for applications hosted in that region pair. And as far as planned Azure updates go, when these planned Azure updates are rolled out, they're rolled out to paired regions, one region at a time, to minimize downtime and any risk of some kind of outage. And like I mentioned, in situations where you have data residency, data continues to reside within the same geography as its pair. At the end of the day, having a broadly distributed set of data centers allows Azure to provide the high guarantees of availability that they do offer for applications hosted in the Microsoft Azure platform.